Hello everyone, I am Deviance Shadow Prophecy, back with another episode of Deviance Daily Discussions. Today's topic will be on Generation Break 8 and the cards that I think will have the biggest impact in the meta. I know that this video is quite late and a lot of the hype has died down around surrounding the Fighters Collection 2017 as well as the Generation Break 8, and I think that's a bit of a shame seeing that all the English meta seems to do is go off what Japan does, and I think that's a bit of a shame. There's not a whole lot of innovation, but essentially the reason I've waited to post this video for so long is just due to the fact that I wasn't able to test with the Generation Break 8 cards a whole lot, and now I've gotten to that point where I have been able to test with a lot of them and see what decks are able to, first of all, get to Generation Break 8 and then take advantage of what that Generation Break 8 does. And the clans and decks that I've found that can do this are, of course, you have your Time Leap from Gear Chronicle. Your Night Rose decks will be able to get to Generation Break 8, as well as your CBD decks, so your Chaos Breaker Dragon decks. All three of those decks are fantastic and phenomenal when they do get to Generation Break 8, and they do actually gain a lot of advantage from actually getting there. This is obviously followed closely by the Shadow Paladin Generation Break 8 in combination with Luard deck is also quite formidable, but again, I'm not quite sure how that actually goes. I'm not a Shadow Paladin player myself, so I can't comment on how that deck particularly goes. So in terms of what's actually going to see play, well, I think that those ones are essentially Chaos Universe being a pretty reliable control deck, probably the best control deck in the meta as of right now. That thing will get to Generation Break 8 quite consistently in its games, just because it likes to slow the game down and actually control the pace. And while the effect isn't super broken or super great, it does fit in nicely with the controlling shell of the Chaos Universe, sorry, not Chaos Universe, the Chaos Breaker Dragon deck. And essentially, just the additional lockdown that it does give you is actually quite relevant, especially against, say, a Granblue deck. If you're able to take advantage of that against Granblue, you'll be in a very, very good spot. And I know that Chaos Breaker Dragon is probably the worst matchup for a Night Rose deck, but even against Gear Chronicle, it's still really, really good. You can still get to GBA if you're still alive by the time you get there, and if you can triangle lock them off that, then you're good to go. Essentially, you'll probably be in a favourable position moving forward. So the Luard one, GBA, call some dudes, give them power. Yeah, I like that. That's not bad. So each thing called gets 15k, I believe. Generation Break 8. It's not bad. Is it better than Ogma? I don't know. As I said, not a Shadow Paladin player, so I know a lot of them nowadays are running 3 Luard, 2 Spectral, a Seabreeze, 4 G-Guards, 2 Diablo, a Carnivore, and then some sort of Urugaiza package, essentially leaving space for, I think, 1 or 2 cards in the G-Zone. I think it's 1 at the moment. And then you can run an Ogma, a Generation Break 8, or a second Carnivore Dragon. And as a team, we've been testing, and we're not particularly sure how we want to go with that deck. Our resident Shadow Paladin player insists that he wants Ogma in his deck, and that's good for him. He's decided that. I personally want to do a little more testing with the deck, see what the GBA actually does for the deck, whether it's relevant or not, or whether the choice of Ogma is actually better, or maybe it is better just to run Carnivore Dragon. Who knows? But yeah, so we will test that one a little more, I think, going into the future. But at the moment, it does look like Ogma is just the better choice for the style of deck that our Shadow Paladin player has. And then we move into the good, the really good. So we have the Beyond Order Dragon for Gear Chronicle. So, essentially, going into Generation Break 8 in Gear Chronicle can be done by 3rd Stride pretty consistently. Like, it's not super hard to get there. So your first stride is Metallica Phoenix, flip something up. Second stride is Gear Groovy, which use its skill to flip up a next stage, so then you're at GB4 essentially, and then at the end of turn you'll be at GB5, GB6, so all you have to do is G-guard, and then by third stride you're at GB8, which is phenomenal. And that's not hard to do with your whole Melem or Tar loop that you can get going, so you can essentially filter until you find a heal trigger most of the time, or even if you know the matchup that you're facing is quite poor, sometimes you actually keep a heal trigger in your opening hand, which is fantastic and really, really good to do. So essentially, throughout testing that deck, and I've tested it extensively, I have actually found the Gear Groovy is better. I was testing between adding the Gear Groovy package to get to GB8 or just straight running like 4 next stages, and the Chronos Revolution package, like Chronos Command, Chronos Revolution Dragon. And throughout testing that, I have teched out that GZone quite a bit, and essentially found a way that I like it to work for the way that I want the deck to function, which is fantastic for me. And yeah, I have found that essentially 2 next stages and then the option of essentially a pseudo third next stage, not quite, but still another main phase and then another set of attacks is still quite devastating to your opponent. And binding 8 is quite a large cost, but you can compensate throughout that. Essentially if you use the Uluru G-Guard, like not the new one but the old one, essentially allows you to put more things back in the deck, which is fantastic. So you've essentially got 3 turns of next stage as opposed to 2. And I just think that is quite enough to close out a game if double next stage isn't already a thing that you can do. And you don't by any means have to go into the GB8 third stride. Essentially in the mirror match you probably want to rush... Sorry, excuse me. You probably want to rush to GB8 and try and get there as fast as you can. Just so you essentially get the first GBA and you get to be on the aggression as opposed to on the recession, on the receiving end of the attacks, and then you get to go into your GBA if you live. So that's going to be an interesting thing to see throughout a lot of matchups, is just the rush to get to GB8 and what decks actually want to race and can race to get there, which at the moment mainly is Gear Chronicle. And then we move into Granblue. Ooh. Yep, Granblue. This card is absolutely phenomenal. It's free. It is legitimately free. It is just call a field. Give every card called, I believe it's 10k. Yep, that's pretty insane, especially in the late game when you've already got Formic the Ghostian family in the drop zone, assuming it doesn't get banned in the TCG as well, the Western meta. So you give essentially... So you can call 3 of them or 4 of them, and you can just give... So that's an extra 30 to 40k power that you can just give wherever you want. Then you can call over them with essentially multi-attackers and things like that, and just get off your 4 or 5 attacks like normal. And then basically the rest of your deck will be stand triggers by that point, because you'll be running pretty low in the deck from what I've seen throughout testing the deck. So it's pretty fantastic. And essentially you can, so you've got your double Goash, your Negrosongas, your Dragoots, and by that time you are sorted to go. And that card is really, really good. I do understand why a lot of lists I see are running the GBA at 2. I personally think that 1 is enough, but I could see a way to run it at 2 if you... Sorry, excuse me. Just because I like to essentially run a few different things in my GZone than what a lot of other people do, so I've kind of maxed my GZone out as much as I can without essentially costing too much for the deck. So I hope that that will do well going into the future. And as of this time, I've still not decided what deck I want to actually play in the national tournaments, be it Gear Chronicle or Granblue. But again, that'll just come back to me testing it out and seeing which deck I do like better and I am more comfortable with. So yeah, the GB8s, I think, will, at the moment, be a mainstay in decks for a while. Those that can reliably get there will actually run the GB8. I think that a lot of decks that can't won't essentially invest the resources in trying to fight their way to GBA, and maybe some will, just as a payoff if they do get there against, say, a slower matchup, like they're playing against Chaos Universe, and they can go, oh, I can actually make it to GB8. If for instance, Link Joker does see a big resurgence in the meta, I think that we will definitely see a lot of decks change their GZone into a more GB8 and late game focused deck for that, maybe that one turn where they get to unlock all their dudes and they can actually do what they want to do. We might see that in a few of the other decks. But anyway, that is my opinion on the GB8s from what I've seen throughout testing so far. Please let me know if you guys have found anything while testing out GBAs, anything that's a really good idea, anything that's like that, because I'd be really interested to hear that. Anyway, I once again am Deviance Shadow Prophecy, and I will see you in the next one.